I think busy is a dirty word. And that goes back to kind of what society is telling us. Society tells us like being busy deserves a badge of honor. Being busy is a choice.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode 161. Today, we're talking about creating work-life balance with Lauren Golden. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-FIELDS Mindful Mama Mentor. I help smart, thoughtful moms stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I'm the author of the upcoming new book, Raising Good Humans. Welcome back. So nice to connect with you and to be in your ears again, whether you are walking or riding in your car, doing laundry or doing the dishes, whatever you're doing. I'm glad to connect with you. And a big welcome if you are a brand new person. Woohoo! This is so cool. I'm glad to connect with you. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with Lauren Golden, and she is an author and the leader of the Free Mama movement. And she's a woman on a mission to ensure that no mother ever has to choose between family and finance. And I'm so excited for you to listen to this conversation. I've been thinking a lot about, how our mindfulness practice helps us from the inside out. And there are things that we need to create more balance and to create more space and create more time, like I talked about in episode 160, last week's episode, that there's some things we need to do from the outside in. And so we talk a little bit about that today, and it's about creating work-life balance. And so you're going to listen in this conversation for a few different takeaways. I invite you to listen for these that I had. And I really want you to hear that this whole idea that balance, the whole idea is not perfection. It's just to not fall over. And then another point is that, busy is a choice, and we have to take ownership over our choices, right? And this felt so exciting to hear that. I love this part of it, and that we can have it all. But to do that, we have to stop trying to do it all, right? So cool. So I hope you'll join me at the table as I talk to Lauren. And before I do, I just want to remind you that I have some resources out there for you. If you are wanting to start a daily yoga and mindfulness practice, I have the Daily Practice 28-day course, which is really awesome jumpstart, and you get all these amazing videos. And if you're wanting to stop yelling, you're really frustrated, I have a resource for you for that too. I have the Stop Yelling formula. So there's a lot of resources you can jump around and check out at mindfulmamamentor.com. So if you haven't been there in a while, I invite you to click around and check it out. There's all kinds of things for you to check out, including the Daily Practice and the Stop Yelling formula. And in conjunction, wow, what a powerhouse. So check those out, mindfulmamamentor.com. And now join me as we talk to Lauren Golden. Lauren, thanks so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you again today, Hunter.
I'm excited to talk to you too. And we're going to be talking about the ever elusive work-life balance. And before I even ask you about this, I just have to say, when we think about balance, just picture yourself in yoga in like a tree pose. You're wobbling, right? It's always like a back and forth. There's a back and forth. I'm not suggesting that we're going to find the elusive, amazing place, right? Are you with me on this, Lauren?
I am with you. And I'm actually, I don't think you've read my book yet, but I'm going to send it to you because I have an entire chapter about this where I talk about balance. And I'm actually a former dancer. So I have spent time doing yoga. I'm not a consistent practitioner by any means, but I am a former dancer. And I still dance. I still take dance classes at my local gym and I love it. And it's the similar concept when it comes to balance. And, whether you think about a pirouette turn or whatever it is, the whole idea behind balance as a dancer is to not fall over. It's not about perfection. It's not about, not wobbling. I think wobble actually is the exact word I use in my book, but it's about not falling over. And so how can we attain a balance, so to speak, where there's a give and take that still feels good in the bigger picture? Maybe every day is not perfect. Maybe one day you spend more time at work or you spend more time with your family. I actually was just telling you my daughter's homesick today from school unexpectedly. So this is my one work thing. And then I'm going to be full on mom mode the rest of the day, right? And so how do we look at the bigger picture and feel good about the balance that we've created in our life? It's not about everything being 50-50 all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can kind of think of it as like, maybe this is like a North Star or something like that. But like, I love that. The whole idea is to not fall over. Yes.
Yeah.
The whole idea is just not fall over. Don't fall over. This is the idea. And when sometimes we fall over, and actually in my yoga class, kind of going back to this metaphor of balance, because I teach a weekly class, I say the rule in my class is that when you fall over, you have to say, ha ha, ha ha ha. they all just start laughing. It's good. But that's the idea, right? It's like we have to just, I don't know, it's to give us some perspective anyway, a little bit.
Yes. And also by laughing, like you're talking about in your class, you're also giving yourself grace and you're not taking yourself too seriously. You're realizing that perfection and striving for perfection, it's so unrealistic because you will never win. It doesn't exist. It's an ideal that's not worth chasing. And so having this ability to laugh at ourselves, I love that that's what you're teaching them how to do, because it's teaching you to forgive yourself when you fall short, because we're all going to have moments where we fall short, and it's okay. It's okay. But like trying not to fall over, the key is to get back up, right? And more importantly, and I'm sure that we'll dive into this with this topic of work-life balance, is figuring out maybe how to not get in that same position again, right? How can I do this differently? How can I lean on my neighbors or my spouse? How can I start to get stuff off my plate so that I don't have so many things weighing me down and tipping me over from one side to the other? So yeah, I can play with this metaphor for this entire but I think it's a really good one. And I love that you're teaching people to kind of laugh when they don't get it right, because they'll just try again and they'll get better.
Yeah. Yeah. And get better at laughing at ourselves. I love that you said get things off my plate, because one of the big problems is that we're super, super squeezed. And this is definitely something I really want to talk to you about. But first, I think the listener needs to know, like, why am I talking to you about this? Like, what? Tell us a little bit about your story, because you're a mom of 3, and now you're teaching people how to do freelance work, finding that kind of work-life balance. What brought you to this place?
Oh my goodness. It's been a long journey, as I'm sure you can appreciate. My story really begins when I became a mom, and talking about striving for perfection and just kind of this idea of balance. My version of motherhood when I became a mom looked very different than the version that I grew up with, which was also the version that I thought I wanted for myself. I grew up with a stay-at-home mom. She is amazing. She was amazing. She is amazing. But she had a completely different life and environment when she was raising my sister and myself than what I walked into. And when I got pregnant with my oldest, it was not a financial possibility for me to stay home. I had to go back to work. Our bank account and our well-being and our mortgage and all of these things were relying on me going back to work. And I had a lot of guilt and a lot of feelings surrounding that, and that I wasn't going to be good enough as a mom because I wasn't going to be there, and a lot of things that I hear from women that I work with now today. But something really interesting happened in my experience that first day back from maternity leave with my oldest daughter, who's about to turn 7, which is insane to me that I have a 7-year-old. So this is a long time ago, but something really interesting happened. And it was one of those life moments where you remember exactly where you were when it happened. I don't know if you have any of those, Hunter, where you're like, yep, I know exactly where I was. I know everything about the environment. I can picture being there. That's how aha of a moment this was for me. Wow. And I remember sitting back in my office, my first day back from maternity leave. I had already gone to the bathroom and pumped once, and I was kind of getting caught up on emails and had already done all the hellos. And I was starting to work again. And I physically sat back and sighed and had this moment where I realized I was always going to have to work. I loved working. I'm ambitious. I like producing. I like learning new things. I like using my brain in that different way that we do in kind of a professional setting than what's required when we're home. And it's not that either is right or wrong or better or worse, but I had this epiphany that everything was going to be okay, was kind of this moment that I had. Like, I can be a good mom and I can work because this is a part of who I am, and it's all going to be good. But if we flash forward a couple of years, I had my second child, and that's when I started to feel the pull. And I think you used the word pull earlier. Like, I started to feel that, all right, I got too many plates now. I have 2 kids. I have a husband. My needs were lost long ago. I don't even know what self-care is at this point. I'm in the car commuting 3 hours a day, taking my kids to 2 different childcare places. I worked at 2 different buildings. My husband at this point was self-employed, and so he was never home for dinner. I had an hour and a half at home with my baby and my 2-year-old every single night, and it was dinner and bath and laundry and rush, and then wake up and do it all over again. And much like that first aha moment, I had the second aha moment in the sigh, but this one wasn't a positive one. This was the one where I realized I could not keep living my life this way. It wasn't working. I wasn't showing up as the mom I wanted to be. I wasn't showing up as the wife that I wanted to be. I really probably had deviated pretty far from the employee I wanted to be at this point too, because I was so full of resentment towards my job for, being the thing that was taking me away from my family. And it just wasn't working. And so that was a really big moment for me where I knew I had to make some serious life adjustments. And so over the last couple of years, I discovered freelancing. I tried a lot of different other ways to make money from home before that, I'll be honest. And we could talk about some of those too. But for me, it was freelancing that was the game changer, which if that's a term you're not familiar with, it's kind of like a job, but you're not an employee. So you're a contract worker. So you would fill out, a W-9 instead of a W-2 is the technicality. But for lack of a better term, you're essentially self-employed. So you're a service provider to other business owners or entrepreneurs who need your help. And there are dozens, if not hundreds of services that you could provide as a freelancer. And so I discovered this world and realized I could use the same skills I had at my 9-to-5, but I could do it on my own. And what that allowed me to do was set my own hours and set my own rates and my own pay and have that control that I had been craving and that I had felt like I had really lost when all of a sudden, I was faced with a larger family and more responsibilities. And so over the last year last few years in terms of why am I here? Why am I talking to you today? I have really mastered the art of time management. And I know that is something that women, mothers especially, crave in their lives. They need the skills to be better at managing their time so that we can get rid of the guilt and we can get rid of the resentment and these feelings that we hold on to because we don't feel like we're in control of our own lives. And so I feel like I'm pretty good at it at this point. I've taught thousands of women my different techniques for it, but it does not come from a place of, I just knew it. I had to figure this stuff out. And so I love that I have the opportunity now to share it with other people, what worked for me and how they can implement it into their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so much there that I kind of want to unpack there. I love that you said that, you had this realization that you actually loved working, because I think, a lot of the women I work with and talk to, they kind of feel guilty for even liking working. But in some ways, it's crazy because that's part of the balance of who we are, and in some ways, when we think about parenting and families and things like that, it's actually like, it can almost be like if our kids are our everything, it's almost too much pressure on them. And that can be great. Like if you're a stay-at-home mom or dad, and that's fulfilling you, that's wonderful. But, to have them be kind of everything in your world is like, it's a lot of pressure on them, and it's actually kind of nice for us to get a little bit of space and distance. And then we get this kind of perspective on them. But I love that you love working unabashedly. I mean, I feel that way too. Like I need to give back to the world. I need to be engaging with adults. I need to be creating and helping people and doing kind of my calling. And I feel like in some ways, like, I guess it's frustrating because that kind of goes to what you said about your second epiphany, right? Like we're so squeezed that we kind of feel like we have to kind of choose this camp, right? Like I work with a lot of people, they want help maybe from me from mindfulness for some of the things that you were talking about. Like they're working a ton of hours, they have an hour and a half home with their kids, and then they're like, how can I fit this, into my life? And it's hard because like there's only, in some ways, like there's the things we can do and then the things we can't do, you know what I mean? Like about it, like people feel really stuck. And I like that you took that stuckness and said, okay, instead of just like, this is my life and I'm miserable, you started to say there's another North Star, right? This is actually the thing that I want. I want to have my family. I want to work, and it's okay that I want both of these things. Mm-hmm. How can I get there? And I deserve that. And it's not, I don't just have to knuckle under and, feel stuck and ground down in this incredibly squeezed schedule. And I appreciate that, because that's how I feel. Like, I feel like, oh my gosh, thank God I've built my own life and my own work, because the way I think that life is sort of set up for the average person right now is insane. It's crazy. And like something like 64% of people don't even like their jobs. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. That's high. And how, unfulfilling to do that every day, to be dissatisfied and then feel stuck and feel like you can't do anything about it. And honestly, that is where the Free Mama was born from. Is my mission is to make sure that moms know that they don't have to choose between family and finances. And we have we have a very polarizing country that we live in here in the United States, but I feel like our world is also very, either or. And so we have been fed for the last however many years this idea of the lean in movement. And don't get me wrong, I want more women in leadership positions, on boards, in companies, and in government. I think it's important. I think the lean in movement serves a really positive purpose and is an initiative worth pursuing. It wasn't my initiative. It didn't speak to me. I didn't want to chase jobs where I had to be gone more, or where I had to give more of myself for a mission that wasn't my mission. And then on the other end, we have this ideal, whether created by Pinterest or just pursued by Pinterest, is this perfect stay-at-home mom who makes everything from scratch and sends homemade gifts to teachers and all of these things. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It's beautiful. But that sure as heck is not me. I'm not crafty and I'm not a good cook. And so if that were my ideal that I were chasing, I would fall short every day. And that doesn't always feel good either, right? I would have zero confidence if that's who I was having to live up to. And so where do, I would argue, the majority of us fit in if we don't fit in with that and we don't fit in with that? And so that literally is why I'm so passionate about what I do. Do I think freelancing is the only way to achieve work-life balance and be happy? No. Do I feel like it's a really awesome one that has no barrier for entry that a lot of people can be successful at and pursue? Yeah, I do. It's why I created my business. And so I feel so passionately about making sure that women just know what their choices are. You don't have to stay at a job if you hate it. And you don't have to stay at this job just to have healthcare because, your childcare expenses are eating up the rest of your paycheck. You have other choices. Are you going to have to work for them? Yeah, nobody's going to hand it to you. Like you're going to have to work hard. But by doing that, you're going to give yourself the freedom, control, and flexibility to achieve that balance that you're looking for, and to kind of call the shots and say, you know what, my kid's home today. I'm not working today. What can I get off my schedule? I don't need a boss's approval. I don't need to call into anybody. I'm going to be there for my daughter, and I don't have to feel torn one way or another about it. It's accessible to me. And so I feel really passionately about what I do. And again, this is not to say that if you are able to stay home financially and not work, that is amazing for you. Focus on what you can for being the best parent. And kind of to what you were saying earlier, I agree with you. I think going all in on your kids is a little bit scary, because guess what happens when they're 18? They leave us. And thank goodness I haven't experienced that pain yet. But I think it's really important that just as people, we never wrap our identity into just one thing. We are multidimensional people. You can be a mom and be, a yoga teacher or a yoga practitioner. Pick your hobby, pick those things that are who you are, because I think we're all more than one thing. We're not just a working mom or just a stay-at-home mom. It's important that we have, those different things to fulfill us, because Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's just too much pressure to have your entire identity wrapped up in the either or, the either or. There's so much gray area in between up for grabs. So we just have to pursue it.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to talk about kind of like that time management piece and how to fit in time for things and stuff like that. I love this alternative though, that your kind of place where you're offering, because I think it's true. Like you go to school and, our schools are generally taught to make workers who work in jobs, and we're taught that sort of this, at least our generation a lot was taught that this, a full-time job is kind of, this is what you do. You go to school and then you get your full-time job and then that's it. But or that opposite, you're completely staying at home. But it's kind of crazy. I just feel like the whole idea of, in some ways, even 40 hours seems so reasonable, right? If there was no commute or something, like people work even more than that. But I think like in some ways 40 hours, like for men and women sounds like kind of crazy. Like it sounds like a lot. Like, and actually they've done studies that productivity is, like after maybe 4 or 5 hours, productivity just tanks for most people anyway. And, there's certain, like you could probably get the same amount of work done in 30 hours that you can in 40 hours. It's really interesting to see, but we're kind of stuck in this time for dollars mode, even if some of that time is just kind of hanging out the water cooler. Well, I don't know, but I don't know if people actually have water coolers. I get excited about this in some ways, like opening up this idea of this conversation too, because there's like, I love this path that you're offering as this individual path, but it's a much larger picture too, like as a society, right, we are going to have more people maybe automated out of jobs and things like that. All these things are happening kind of in the future. And there's things that we can do as individuals, but like societally, like there's things that we could do to support people more. It just isn't, it's not really, I think that we should just, as moms, especially recognize that it's not like, it doesn't really have to be this way, that we are so squeezed. Like there is so much wealth in this country that, I don't know, I just want to throw that out there, that I feel like that piece is really important, that we could be more creative about supporting families and individuals and people so that we're not so squeezed. Have you heard about I don't know, this is like crazy. I'm all getting into politics, which I don't usually do. One of the things that was really interesting, my husband shared with me, there's a guy running for the Democrats in 2020, Andrew Yang, who's running on a platform of a universal basic income. And the whole idea is that everyone in the United States over 18 would get $1,000 a month. Isn't that so amazing? Like it just is kind of like,
there's another country that does, isn't there a European country that does that, or that did a test
there's
of
like
it?
a test. Yeah. People are kind of, so I'm not saying I'm for this. I'm not saying I'm against this. I just think it's interesting that we should kind of think about this idea that we're squeezed, right? And like say, just like you did, right? Like when you were squeezed, and say, how can we be more creative about this? And that's what you're saying kind of on the individual level. It's like, we can be a little more creative about this. And there's this whole world that most of us aren't taught about, the freelancing and things like that is an option for people wanting more balance and things like that. I mean, actually, everyone who works on the Mindful Mama team, except me, is a freelancer. Everyone I work with is a freelancer. They're wonderful. Shout out to Amy and Reza and to Sylvia. I love you.
Free Mama team, couldn't do it without you. And what's really amazing about my team, so as of yesterday, I now have 6 team members, and 5 out of the 6 are graduates of my program over the last year.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's really amazing. And so as I grow and I continue to get my mission out there, I need more contract workers. And so there are currently about 54 million freelancers in the United States. So just if you are listening and you're like, I've never heard of this, I'm pretty sure this person's making it up. I'm not making it up. I promise you, there are lots of contract workers. And it is projected that, I believe by 2025, I could be wrong on the year, but I think by 2025, over 50% of the population will be freelancing.
Wow.
In the United States. And so this is a growing thing. And like you were talking about, with companies and machines and automation and all of these things. And on the other end, with these, societal pushes towards more flexibility in the workplace and more remote jobs, this is naturally coming through where people on both ends really are wanting it at this point, because employees are expensive for companies as well. They're paying benefits and overhead for businesses with offices and all of these things. And so it truly is something that's growing anyway. And I'm really excited to be in a position where I can help women find their place in it, and knowing that, it's not just for some IT person or some, web coder with all of these really specialized skills. There are really basic things that you can get paid to do from home. You don't have to, have some crazy degree or whatever. Like I was saying earlier, there's almost no barrier for entry. There are people who need others to manage their emails or manage their schedules. And so a lot of those types of skills. Yeah, I have one. Yeah. Exactly. So a lot of times that role is called a virtual assistant. So if you've ever been an administrative assistant or an executive assistant in an office, there's actually a virtual role for you as well. And so I'm so passionate about making sure that people understand that this is something they can do. This is something you can take your current skill set or develop a new one if there's one you want to pursue and apply it towards a successful work from home business. To me, like you said earlier about being a business owner, like I'm like, why wouldn't everybody want to do this? And of course, I know realistically, not everyone would want to do it, but it has been such a blessing for my family and to the families that I've been able to work with. And so, yeah, it's really cool. And it's great that it's growing as an industry.
So tell us about your work-life balance now. You, at one point, there was zero self-care and things like that. So tell us about, kind of how many hours is a good, amount of work for you? And then where does some of the rest of that balance?
Yeah. So I have 3 kiddos. One is in like real deal school. So she's in 1st grade. And then my 2 babies go to preschool 4 days a week. So I work very dedicatedly while they are in preschool. So about 4.5 to 5 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. Not a bad work week right there. It's pretty nice. Do I sometimes check email at night or, look at an ad campaign or go into my Facebook group and comment on things that people are asking? I do, but I do because I love it. And I will say that about everything I do at this point. It doesn't feel like work. And I know that probably sounds annoying to some of your listeners, but I think when you find something that you're good at and you finally feel valued for it, which I know was something I struggled with in a 9-to-5 setting. I never really felt appreciated for the things that I was contributing. And I've always felt that validation and that appreciation as a freelancer because of the intimate relationship you start to have with your clients who are outsourcing to you. And so, yeah, most days it's about somewhere between 4.5 and 5 hours while my kiddos are at preschool. My husband now also works from home, which is a newer dynamic in our life. So sometimes we'll go pick up the kids from school together. Sometimes if one of us has a couple more things to wrap up, one of us will go get them. But we usually then go to the gym after we pick up my kiddos from school. So my husband and I will go work out for like 30 to 45 minutes and the kiddos will go play. And they have like a huge gym and basketball court and like playground and stuff in the kids area. Then we go get my big kid from school and then we go to the park pretty much every day after school because we live in Houston. So we have very hot summers, but very, mild winters. So we go to the park by school. We walk and pick her up every day from school, which was, a vision that I would say I definitely manifested. That's something I really wanted as a mom, was to be able to walk my kids to school every day. And so we go pick her up, we go to the park and we come home and make dinner and then we hang out and have a really just boring homebody kind of life. We don't do much, but Fridays I actually take off. When my family relocated almost 3 years ago now, which was really, really hard. We lived in Kansas City, which was where it's where I grew up. All my friends and family were from there. And we moved to Katy, Texas, just outside of Houston. It was huge for us. I was pregnant when we moved. There was a lot going on. It was really, really hard. And so when we moved here, speaking of, being busy and balance and your plates and knowing when you need help, one of the first things I did when we moved here, because I am an extrovert and I'm very social and I know that about myself, was join a mom's group. And that's something previously I had never really had the opportunity to do because with my first 2 kids, I was working full time and all of that stuff takes place during the day, and so that was not a part of my mom life really back in Kansas City. But when we moved here, I made it a priority because I knew I needed to meet people and form some genuine relationships or I would never feel rooted in our new home. And so I still go. It's been 3 years and I still go every Friday. Speaking of the self-care, it's something that fills my cup. I feel like as moms, we're constantly pouring out. We're pouring out to our employer. We're pouring out to our children. We're trying to save some for our spouse, hopefully. Although I will say, if you have small children, I know that they sometimes come after the small children in terms of volume, but and then we just barely have anything for ourselves. And going to my mom's group every Friday, even though sometimes I might have something in my business that I'm like, oh, I really want to work on that right now. Or, the weather's so nice. I really just want to go, hang out outside with my kids. I make it a priority to go because every time I leave my mom's group, I feel fuller. And if I don't take that time to reinvest back in myself, then I will run out for everybody around me who needs me to pour into them. And so that is a huge priority. And that was a big shift that did not happen until I controlled my own schedule and I was freelancing basically.
Yeah.
I will also say, the move. So sometimes you might need that external pressure of like, I moved and I knew if I didn't do this, I wouldn't be happy. So I had that external pressure to be like, do something about it. I'm that kind of person. Like I'm willing to go out there and get uncomfortable and do something about it to try to be proactive because I know myself. So if you're listening, you're kind of like, oh, that I'm not good at meeting new people, or that sounds really intimidating. I think it really just starts with some self-reflection. You've got to be honest about what are your needs? What do you need more of? Do you need more care for your body? Do you need more care for your mind? Do you need to just go relax and get a pedicure? Like, what are those things that you need? And then how can you be proactive? And that's how I approach self-care now, which is very different than how I used to when I was at my 9 to 5. It was like, okay, I'm in tears and I've completely melted down and I hate my life. And my husband would be like, go get a pedicure. Like, it was like a Band-Aid, but I was already the damage was already done. And now I'm very proactive with self-care. Like I said, whether it's the mom's group or going to a dance class at our local gym, I do these things because I know if I don't, I'll get to that place. And I don't want to get to that place. I want to avoid it. And so by just making it a part of my routine, I find that I stay a lot more level-headed and more present as a parent. And honestly, my business thrives when I take care of myself as well. So
yeah,
there's been big shifts. Big shifts.
Yeah, you're better able to offer everything. It's funny that you mention your mom's group, because in the last episode, I talked about time and the sort of time, the idea of time poverty, and so this is really kind of follows that theme a bit. And one of the things I mentioned as an idea to kind of help us kind of create more time is having a scheduled thing that you sort of go to religiously that feeds yourself and things like that. And that you're describing that completely in your mom's group. What was your mom like? What was her model like? Did she take care of her own needs, or was she a mommy martyr?
No,
somewhere in the middle.
No, I'm giggling actually because my older sister and my mom are very similar. They are lavish self-care givers, but that is what, or that's what yes. So it just made me chuckle. My mom and my sister, and you know what? I'm only chuckling because it doesn't identify with how I need self-care. My version just looks different, but they love, a monthly massage and a facial and to go shopping or whatever, the fanciest drink at Starbucks, but that makes them feel good. And who am I to judge that? I don't care, but it made me chuckle because that's my mom's version of self-care. No, my mom did not struggle with self-care at all. My mom stayed home. So she was in control of her schedule. One thing that I simultaneously thank and curse my mom for, and I don't know if you have anything like that in your life, but I'm like, this was a double-edged sword. And I talk about this in my book as well, is my mom had a very hard time saying no. Very hard time saying no. And so while she didn't have a 9 to 5, my mom volunteered everywhere. And she was very well known in Kansas City. She was involved with a lot of nonprofit organizations. She gave of herself constantly, which is probably why she needed all those facials so she could replenish. But she gave her time very, very generously. And what happens when you sort of become that person is you get asked again. And you get asked again and you get asked more. And so that sort of became my mom over the years. And then when we moved back to Kansas City right before we got married, I found myself in that same trap. Oh, you're Pam's daughter. Oh, do you want to volunteer for this board? And
oh my goodness.
That. And so not only was I at my 9 to 5, and now all of a sudden I have 2 kids, but I was actually on 3 boards. I was the president of a professional organization as I was starting my freelancing business on the side. I had all these things going on. And then I love that you use the word squeezed. I talk about the word busy all the time. I think busy is a dirty word. And that goes back to kind of what society's telling us. Society tells us like being busy deserves a badge of honor. Being busy is a choice. My days are full. I do a lot in my days, but everything I choose to do at this point in my life is very intentional. And if I decide to go, do a classroom party at my kid's school, it's because I want to, not because I feel like I have to. And that was a really big shift that I did have to make. And my mom and I have talked a lot about this. I'm thankful for her example. She's incredibly philanthropic. She's incredibly generous. She is a big giver of time, but I always tell her, you didn't teach me how to say no. And I will say now she does. She does now. She learned it way later in life. Maybe she learned it from me. No. But I had to learn how to say no, because when I stepped back and I looked at all of the things that I was doing, but then I was complaining about never being home, I had to take ownership that I had done it to myself. And so when we talk about creating time or prioritizing or all these different, themes around, kind of buried within time management, what we have to realize, like it or not, is that we make time for the things that we prioritize. So for example, you might be at a job and have an insane presentation coming up, but if you were a single parent and the school calls and said your kid just threw up and you have to get there and pick them up, I bet you're going to drop what you're doing and go pick up your kid. Because we prioritize, we make time for the things that we prioritize. And so if you are feeling squeezed, as you say, Hunter, which I'm probably going to borrow that, I'll give you credit. If you're constantly feeling squeezed, you need to have some self-reflection and step back. And maybe you need to write it down. Maybe you need to write a physical list of everything on your plate. That's what I did. I'm writing down all these boards and I'm like, gosh, am I actually still involved in that? Oh yeah, I got to go on Tuesday. I wrote it all down. And I looked at it and I'm like, what can I let go of? And I crossed out almost I'm like, this is ridiculous. What I say I want is not in alignment with what my actions are. And so I had to change my actions. And saying no is not easy. I think especially as women, we feel guilty or we feel obligated or we feel, I'm going to let them down if I don't do that. But at the end of the day, it comes back to, the same reason I like freelancing and being self-employed. It's that you have to do what's best for you and you have to do what's best for your family. And it's not anybody else's business. We can't let the pressures of society dictate, it's good to be busy. No, it's not if you're stressed out all the time. That's not serving you in a positive way.
No, that's not a badge of honor. It's crazy. Have you ever seen this? Speaking of busy, the US is a little crazy about busy, but Japan is really insane about busy and work balance, and actually gender roles too, as far as women and men and ideal moms. But anyway, they had I think I saw it in National Geographic, the New York Times or something. They had pictures of, they have a word in Japanese that's called just falling asleep anywhere. And they have pictures of people asleep, standing up in a subway car or in a diner asleep and things like that, because they're working so much that it's socially acceptable and actually seen as good or, admirable
they
in
must
some way.
Be working hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that nuts? It's kind of the extreme. I think we're so extreme, but that's crazy. I want to go to the Spanish system of siesta every day.
Yes. That sounds great.
I love that. All right, cool. So yeah, I like this. Busy is a choice. And I think you're pointing to, listener, if you are resonating with some of this, you have to kind of look at this and say, what am I saying yes to? And really actually when we look at what's happening in the body, at any time that we are busy and rushing, it's actually the nervous system actually reads this, very instantaneously as a threat. Because if you think about it, when we, through evolution and things like that, if we were ever rushing somewhere, there was something wrong. There was some kind of threat in the environment. So that instantly, anytime you are busy and hurrying, you're triggering your fight, flight, or freeze stress response. So you're putting yourself into this sort of low level of stress. And many moms and dads talk to me about wanting to be calmer and wanting to yell less and things like that. And really the number one thing we can do to do that is to reduce our overall stress levels.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're rushing from place to place and when we're packing our schedules, you're just putting your stress levels so far up there and you're just straining your nervous system so that, when your child has a problem, you're so much more likely to get triggered. It just happens that much faster with busyness and things like that. So do you have time to ever be alone? I know you're kind of an extrovert. I can tell. I see one. I'm one too, so I can see it. But do you have some time for quiet, for reflection?
It's really interesting. When I first started working with my mentor about a year and a half ago, she was really big. And I know you're going to look at me, Hunter, and be like, okay, we're going to talk about this later, Lauren, and we can do that. We can bring it offline. She really wanted me to start meditating because I'm very, not necessarily stressed all the time. Because again, I've got a good balance, but I am a naturally high strung, pretty type A, high standards and very high energy, obviously. And so she's like, I feel like meditation would be good for you. And I'm like, ooh, sitting still, like that feels like a punishment. And so what I have actually found, and it is still something I would like to ease myself into, but what I have learned is that meditation doesn't, and I'm sure you can validate this, meditation doesn't have to be the like sitting, it doesn't have to be that. It's more about quieting your mind. And for me, that daily trip to our gym, that is what's for me. Whether I'm walking and listening to music or walking and not listening to anything and just kind of tuning everything out or listening to a podcast. I do a class every Saturday morning. And I know, even though I'm moving because I'm very active, when I come out of that, I feel like a whole new person. I'm thinking clearer. I'm just centered. And so I've learned that that's kind of what works best for me. I have not grown comfortable in silence yet. I am a work in progress. So I do have alone time. I have me time, but it's not usually spent quietly.
No, that's okay. Don't feel bad. I mean, actually, like running was my gateway into mindfulness because I, just like you, like I have a lot of, and like I have these tools because I really need them or I have in my life. Yeah. And for me, running was a gateway into doing that because I couldn't, I felt like I couldn't sit still. And then yoga, also another movement, mindful movement activity. Those are gateways. So good for you. You're finding your way.
I'm calming
right where you need to be.
I'm calming right before your very eyes.
Awesome. So balance. We are trying not to fall over, and we're wanting to find these places for, we haven't even talked about time with friends, time with our marriage, time alone. Like we have needs, and I think, this idea of taking ownership over our choices and kind of taking some time to reflect on our needs and then maybe even reflect on, all the alternative options out there and things like that. So I want people to know, where can people find out more about the work that you're doing with the Free Mama movement? And I'm happy to do some partnering with you. We're going to do a webinar in like 2 days. So if you're listening to this live, you just got a couple days. If it's in the future, it's okay.
You can still connect. We'll hang out.
We'll hang out again. But tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. So our hub, so to speak, for the Free Mama movement, we have a Facebook group. I'm incredibly active in it. It is a very positive, supportive, but also tactical place. So if you have questions about freelancing or questions about time management, it is a very engaged community. And so you can find that on Facebook. And the name of the group is the Free Mama Movement. And maybe we can include a link in the show notes. If you want to learn more about freelancing, you can always go to my website. You can go to thefreemama.com. It's got a lot of different things on there. So you can find my book on there. We just launched Free Mama TV on YouTube. So there's free trainings. We launch a new episode every single Tuesday. But yes, I teach moms how to make money from home. Time management is a really important part of that, because you might be thinking, that's great. Well, I can't quit my job till I'm already making money. It's cool. That's most people's scenario. That was my scenario too. And so you can't find the time to start a business while working full time and being with your kids if you don't have those skills. So I dive a lot into that as well. And I'm glad that we got to talk about it a little bit today. And you're right, we could talk about time management and friends and all the different components for forever. And even more importantly, outsourcing and making sure you're not doing it all alone. And one of my biggest things is with this concept of the free mama movement is I really believe as moms that we can have it all. We can have financial stability. We can have that time with our family. We can have a good relationship with our partner and our friends and ourselves. But in order to have it all, you have to stop doing it all. And that kind of was the theme, without saying it that way, of this conversation, is stop trying to do it all. So one part of that is saying no more and not being so busy. But another part of that is delegating, letting your kids help you with chores, not feeling like you have to do everything for yourself, speaking with your partner about stuff, outsourcing, maybe setting up like a mommy co-op with your neighbor next door so that you can go get that pedicure or go to that workout class or go for the run and meditate and create that time for yourself. And then let that mom do the same thing and kind of give and share that way. But I feel like as women, it's so hard for us to ask for help. And if I can leave you with anything, it would be, please let people help you. People are good, people are genuine, and they want to help you meet your goals and be successful.
Ask people to help you. I mean, we were just saying today, I mean, I'm so with you, like down with hashtag all the things. It's like, you can't do all the things. No. Like, I love that. We can have it all, but we have to stop trying to do it all. Yeah. I mean, today I have a friend who's having a surgery and she said, hey, our kids are off school. She said, hey, can my daughter come to your house at 6:15 in the morning? Of course. And you know what? Yeah. It makes me feel really good to be able to help her because people don't ask for help that often. And it actually feels great to be needed and to be wanted by your friends and to be able to help your friends. So cool. Lauren, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Maybe we'll get you, we'll do a mini meditations at some point together. I'll get you.
I need it.
But I hope that some of the takeaways I'm kind of getting from this, I'm really thinking about this idea that busy word is a dirty word. And I like that coming from you, actually, because of your energy, because of your exuberance and, you've got this vivacity that really comes through, but it's not like I have energy, so I'm going to do everything. It's like, I have energy and I'm going to direct it in the ways that are meaningful for my life. And because the truth is, we just get this one life. The time with kids goes by really fast. Mm-hmm. I mean, now my daughter just turned 12. I'm like, oh my God, it's just crazy.
Almost a teenager.
I know. And it's like this total cliche of what all the old ladies said to you when they were babies. Oh, love every minute. And you're just like, shut up. You're driving me crazy. I'm going crazy here. But it really is the time is short. And so we have to kind of take that perspective of step back, reflect, stop trying to do all the things. So thank you so much, Lauren, for sharing your voice and sharing what you do. And I just hope this just kind of sparks some alternatives for people who are thinking that, it just has to be one way, or I'm feeling stuck. And there's a lot of option and a lot of possibility, I think, now that sometimes we just need to hear about to let ourselves realize this possibility is out there, and the possibility of having more balance is out there. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Anytime.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Don't you love that idea that we can have it all? We just have to stop doing it all. It so sings to me, right? We can be creative about that. And I just love this idea of the North Star and this third path of we don't have to be, we can take that space somewhere between lean in and the ideal stay-at-home mom, right? Like, this is probably in reality where most of us are. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts and things about this. So check in with me in our private Facebook group, and you can find out how to join that at mindfulmamamentor.com. And as I mentioned, Lauren and I are going to be doing a webinar in just a couple days, and you can sign up to see that live on April 4th or catch the replay. And you can sign up to, if you're on my mailing list, I'll let you know about that. So you can just get on the mailing list by going to mindfulmamamentor.com, scroll down to the bottom of any page and click the text in blue that says get started. And we'll get you on the mailing list and you'll learn all about it. So yeah, it's going to be how to get started with her amazing resource, which I'm so excited about. So please check that out and I'll let you know about it if you're on the mailing list. And otherwise, I'm just wishing you a beautiful week. I hope this episode inspires you to have a bigger vision for what's possible, to think about, I don't know, I just love that idea of that perspective and thinking about possibility and taking that step back to take a look at our lives and say, okay, what's working? What's not working? How can I create more space? How can I be less busy? Right? And really bring those values of being present and into our lives, right? And this is one of these outside-in ways to do that. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I can't wait to talk to you again next week. Namaste. Are you a mom who wants to feel less stressed and enjoy motherhood more? Do you want to be calmer with your kids and be more present for all of your life? I'm a mom who has gone from really being stressed and yelling when my kids were young to having a more grounded, more at ease relationship with life and having more enjoyable cooperative relationships with my kids. And I've shown hundreds and thousands of women around the world how to do this. And I want to show you how to do it too. So if you are currently feeling stuck or stagnant, this is definitely for you. I've created a free downloadable Audible training, Mindfulness for Moms, the superpower you need. And it will show you how to respond rather than react, how to let go of stress and feel more grounded in seconds, how to have a smoother day today and become more present for your kids for a lifetime. To get on this audio training absolutely free, simply visit the website www.mindfulmomguide.com.